Down goes Frazier.
Hey, what's up with it, fam? It's Hot Boxing Minute, your favorite pharmaceutical engineer turned boxing analyst, back at you with that uncut realness. And we had a huge amount of fights to go over this weekend, or at least to watch this weekend. I'm not going to go over all of it. Before we begin, hit that like button, hit follow if you're not already following, leave a comment at the end of the video. Anyways, there were so many fights on Saturday. We started off in the morning with that big card out there in Japan. Kenshiro Teraji got another knockout win over a last-minute replacement, Oskagagwa. It was a good fight. I'm not actually going to talk too much about that fight because I kind of expected Kenshiro Teraji to win that one. Probably one of the best fighters at the small weight divisions. But Saturday night, I'm watching TV at home, and I had 1, 2, 3 different monitors. Could have had 4 different monitors up at once. There was events going on with Showtime. There was Top Rank. There was Matchroom. It was hard to pick, and it was hard to watch them all at the same time. So I'm only going to talk about the big cards, the main events, the stuff that had everybody talking. I don't have time to cover all the individual independent cards. Sorry, folks, I'm not going to make an hour-long episode regarding all those awesome fights I got a chance to watch this weekend. But I think the biggest news this past weekend was the sensational knockout of Sebastian Fundora. Now, we all love Sebastian Fundora up until this fight with Brian Mendoza out there at the War Grounds in Carson City, California. Sebastian Fundora was kind of seen as like the slender man of boxing, like the new Paul Williams, except he's even taller than Paul Williams. I think Paul Williams was like 6 feet tall. Sebastian Fundora is 6'5", fighting at 154 pounds. He broke, Erickson Lubin's face. His most recent fight was, I think his name was Campos. In this fight against Brian Mendoza, Brian La Bala Mendoza, who just got off back-to-back wins. His probably most infamous win was against Jason Rosario, who was the guy that, ended up beating Julian J. Rock Williams. Jason Rosario himself ended up catching a loss later to Jermell Charlo. Hold on, let's look up Jason Rosario's resume real quick, because that was what got him in the door in that fight against Sebastian Fundora. But before that fight, he had beat Julian Williams. He knocked out Julian Williams and Jorge Cota. And then he got beat by Jermell Charlo and knocked out by Erickson Lubin. And then he went on a little bit of a tear. But anyways, Brian Mendoza got that fight with Slenderman, Sebastian Fundora. And let me look at these rankings if I can pull them up really quick for middleweight or where they were at. Because it was for a strap. It was for the WBC interim junior middleweight strap. So Brian Mendoza was ranked up nice and high. Sebastian Fundora was there. Of course, we know Jermell Charlo is the undisputed champion. He's supposed to have that fight coming up with Tim Tszyu. I don't even know if the arrangements for the fight with Tim Tszyu have been finalized, but Sebastian Fundora was keeping himself busy, I guess, waiting for the opportunity to fight Jermell Charlo. So up next was Brian Mendoza, and Brian Mendoza was a live dog coming into it. But, from the very opening bell, it was very clear that Brian Mendoza had a game plan to nullify Sebastian Fundora's fighting style. And what makes Sebastian Fundora so fascinating is, despite the fact that he's 6'5" with super reach, he likes to fight on the inside. He's somebody that is widely regarded as a fighter that underutilizes his physical tools, but it makes it so entertaining. That's the thing about guys like Sebastian Fundora. Despite the fact that he is that physically gifted with size, he fights in a way that shows a lot of vulnerability, and it's very exciting to watch. So when you see a fighter with offensive weapons and all kind of defensive liabilities, those are the kind of fighters that fans are attracted to watching, because they know at any given moment that fighter could either brutally hurt somebody or they themselves get brutally knocked out. Kind of like Jarrett Hurd, so to speak, And we saw that with Sebastian Fundora in his last performance against Brian Mendoza. It was a vicious fight. I want to say the knockout occurred, let me look this up. It occurred in the 7th round, and it seemed like the whole time Sebastian Fundora was busy trying to figure out how to get at Brian Mendoza. There was a couple of times where the uppercut started to connect, but what ended up happening was Sebastian Fundora got overly excited with that uppercut, got caught with a counter hook, lost his balance, and he was wobbled, and then Brian Mendoza, in great finishing fashion, followed up on that hook that rocked Sebastian Fundora and hit him with, I believe it was an overhand right and another hook, and that was all she wrote. Sebastian Fundora hit the ground, Tim Burr, like a falling piece of lumber, and the referee counted. Sebastian Fundora sat up, but Sebastian Fundora had the wherewithal to know that his brain had taken enough damage for that fight. Shocking win for Brian Mendoza. So for those of you who didn't know going in, Brian Mendoza going into this fight with Sebastian Fundora was a severe underdog. He was a plus 600. That means a 6-1 just to win the fight. To get the knockout win, he was plus 1,100. That means you put up $100, you win $1,100. Nobody thought Brian Mendoza was going to knock out Sebastian Fundora. So if you were one of the few that gambled on Brian Mendoza by knockout, congratulations, you made out like a thief in the night. And Sebastian Fundora, I don't know what's next for that young man. When I think, the main thing when I think of Sebastian Fundora is Jarrett Hurd. But Jarrett Hurd won some titles, and he was on a run kind of mowing everyone down before that defensively liable style that he had caught up to him. So is this the last we see of Sebastian Fundora? Sebastian Fundora was very exciting up until this knockout. We had all thoroughly enjoyed watching Sebastian Fundora in that ring. Maybe he gives us future fights that are quite enjoyable to watch in the future. I don't know. I only have my references Jarrett Hurd, who was the last guy I saw that was like Sebastian Fundora at 154. Kind of tall, all engine, all offense, very weak defensive approach. And once the Jarrett Hurd train got derailed, it never got back on the track. So will we see the Sebastian Fundora train get back on that track and make another run for the title? Or is that it for Slenderman, Sebastian Fundora? You tell me. Now, I'm always optimistic, but previous history patterns in boxing have shown that once you catch that nasty L like that, you end up getting gun shy. You're just not the same offensive powerhouse. Very few fighters can experience something like what Sebastian Fundora did and come back the same fighter. You're not as quick to execute on that trigger as you are before. Once you realize that your jaw can get cracked, it changes people. And that's the fight game. Hey, I'm not the one that steps in the ring. I'm the one that's here outside the ring talking about it. So Brian Mendoza has a lot of options in front of him. He won the WBC Interim Junior Middleweight Championship, so he's next in line, in theory, to get a crack at Jermell Charlo. Now, Brian Mendoza's chances at actually fighting Jermell Charlo are very slim. Despite the fact that Brian Mendoza has that WBC Interim Championship belt, Jermell Charlo is slated to fight Tim Tszyu in 2023. And we already know Jermell Charlo fights like once a year, so he's got 4 other champions or 4 other people that are ranked highly in those sanctioning bodies that Jermell Charlo could choose to fight if he chooses to do so. Let's actually look at those rankings. Hold on. So I'm looking up right now. We're going to look up the junior middleweight rankings to see what's going on with Jermell Charlo. So super welterweight. Okay, so woo, he's in some good company. Okay. So Brian Mendoza pulled off the shocker. He knocked out Slenderman, everyone's favorite tax accountant-looking fighter, Sebastian Fundora. He knocked him out. It was vicious. So now Brian Mendoza has a WBC interim strap. That leaves him first in line in the WBC rankings list to fight Jermell Charlo. But Jermell Charlo's fighting Tim Tszyu in 2023. We know that Jermell Charlo fights once a year. He's got other sanctioning body guys that are ranked number 1. You got Bakram Murtazaliev. You got Michael Soro, Israel Madrimov. You got Beefy Smith. You got all kinds of names hovering in there. So if Brian Mendoza does get a crack at Jermell Charlo, it likely won't come until 2025 if it does happen. And who's to say Jermell Charlo will stay in 154 that long? He might just move up to 160 himself. So 154 is up in the air as far as the contenders until Jermell Charlo, the undisputed champion, makes a decision on what he's going to do with his path forward. But hats off to Brian Mendoza. That was a vicious knockout. So let's talk about that main event, which was for Showtime. Let's go to ESPN Plus. Brick City, Shakur Stevenson, out there at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. Shakur Stevenson put on a clinic against Shuichiro Yoshino. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Shakur Stevenson's most recent opponent, Shuichiro Yoshino, he came off back-to-back high-profile wins. He beat Matayoshi Nakatani. That was the guy that gave Teofimo all kinds of hell when Teofimo was at the peak of his powers. And he also beat Masayuki Ito. Now, Masayuki Ito was the former WBO super featherweight champion, the one that Jamel Herring beat to become a champion. So, Shuichiro Yoshino was on a tear before he encountered Shakur Stevenson, and Shakur Stevenson made him look basic as all hell. Shakur Stevenson dominated that young man in the most ridiculous fashion. Shakur Stevenson, folks, has arrived. 135, he is hitting heavy, and he's a threat to everybody in that division. Now, I don't know what the answer is to Shakur Stevenson. That fight was vicious. I think for certain people there's a misconception that Shakur Stevenson isn't a heavy-handed puncher. And true, maybe he isn't getting crazy knockout stoppages. He doesn't have that one-hitter-quitter power, but he definitely has enough power to keep opponents honest. He did get the stoppage against Jamel Herring. He did beat my guy, Oscar Valdez. He did recently get the stoppage against his last opponent, Shuichiro Yoshino, at 135. And it looks like he's sitting down more into his punches. And at 135, it looks like he's a very, very much an offensive threat in that weight division. So I don't put anything past Shakur Stevenson. Look, y'all, I know it's kind of cliche, and all the boxing pundits and any boxing fan with half a brain can tell you Shakur Stevenson is that dude. Trust me when I say this. Shakur Stevenson is that dude. I don't see anybody beating that guy. Maybe Tank if he throws a lucky punch. If Tank's handlers even decide to throw Tank in there, in with Shakur Stevenson. Thus far in Tank's career, I've seen nothing that indicates his handlers are going to throw him in there with someone like Shakur Stevenson. Maybe that'll change in the future. We're finally seeing Tank in a fight on April 22nd against Ryan Garcia. That's going to be an interesting matchup. We'll see how that develops. Either way, this is about Shakur Stevenson. Shakur Stevenson, from the opening bell against Shuichiro Yoshino, stood in a pocket dead in front of Shuichiro Yoshino's face and made it a difficult night. Now, Yoshino is a come-forward brawler type of fighter that was not effective in any way, shape, or form against Shakur Stevenson. Shakur got the knockdown in the second and the fourth round in a dominant performance. Shakur Stevenson dominated Shuichiro Yoshino in a ridiculous manner. Mind you, Shuichiro Yoshino was a tough dude in his own right. Finally, referee Alan Huggins called an end to the fight. Shakur was just landing too clean on him. 1 minute and 35 seconds into the sixth round, it was a TKO victory for Shakur Stevenson and a statement in the lightweight division. And Shakur Stevenson has arrived at 135. So there was other fights on that card. Keyshawn Davis got an awesome win. Jared Anderson got an awesome win. They were expected to get the win, so I don't really need to go too much into those fights. But obviously, you want to look out for them. Let's go out to San Antonio, Texas, on that big Matchroom card. The hometown hero, Bam Rodriguez, is a champion once again. He got the WBO FlyWeight strap, a vacant strap at the time, by beating Christian Gonzalez. And Christian Gonzalez gave him a tough fight. Christian Gonzalez is 5'7", so he had a bit of height and a bit of reach, but was never actually able to utilize that reach against Bam Rodriguez. Christian Gonzalez was backing up and had his back against the ropes almost the entire fight. Bam Rodriguez dictated the pace of the action. I think the most profound thing about Bam Rodriguez beating Christian Gonzalez this weekend and becoming the WBO FlyWeight champion, Bam Rodriguez is a champion again. The most profound thing is in the post-fight we learned that Bam Rodriguez had got his jaw broken in the sixth round. So Bam Rodriguez had him an Oscar Valdez moment, broke his jaw, found the grit and the determination that champions have, and ended up pulling out that victory, a unanimous decision, an emphatic win against Christian Gonzalez. So now I think the next person in line is going to be Sonny Rodriguez. Sonny Rodriguez. Oh my God. Sonny Edwards. Okay. So we saw Bam Rodriguez get the unanimous decision win against Christian Gonzalez. The most profound thing we learned is that Bam Rodriguez broke his jaw, or Christian Gonzalez broke Bam Rodriguez's jaw in the 6th round of that fight. Bam essentially fought half that fight with a broken jaw. Yes, folks, Bam Rodriguez got that dog in him. That qualifies as being a damn dog. Wow. But anyways, it usually takes 3 to 4 months to heal from a broken jaw. All fingers, including Eddie Hearn, are indicating that the next fight is going to be a title unification with the champions Sonny Edwards and Bam Rodriguez. Boxing community, how does that matchup sound to you? Let me know in the comments section. Let's chop this up. Anyways, that's going to be it for my video on this one. Y'all, there were so many fights this weekend, even in the MMA end. Israel Adesanya is a champion again, but my platform isn't MMA. Anyways, hit like if you haven't already done so. Are you not already following this channel? This is Hot Boxing Minute, folks. The future of boxing analysis on TikTok and YouTube. Peace.